On the evening of May 7th, 2019, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring
There's no sound at all. Oh my gosh. There's no sound at all. Why is my computer thinking that it is time to go to sleep? It's 7:30 at night. It is not time to sleep. Let's try this again. Let me turn this down. Thank you, Kaz, because I sure would have played the whole thing just like that. All right, let's stop it and restart it. Thank you. All righty. Present. Sound share. Sound, yes. Hannah Payne, yes. All right, Kaz, let me know right now if you can hear, okay?
2019, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring ran a red light. He drove headfirst into an 18-wheeler, smashing the front of his Dodge pickup truck before coming to an abrupt stop. Thankfully, no one was injured from the crash. Minutes passed as the damage was assessed. Multiple calls were placed to 911. Then, to the shock of onlookers, Kenneth got back into his truck and he drove off. Something was visibly not right with Kenneth that day. There was no way for him to have known that the real danger was not his medical emergency, but rather the 21-year-old witness to his crash that had decided to take matters into her own hands to just Slot Lounge. Today we're taking on a very recently closed case that has been making headlines for the last 4 years. In one version of this story, a well-intentioned and naive young woman tried only to be a good citizen before things went terribly wrong. In another version, this case is about an entitled and self-righteous vigilante who is deserving of a long and just punishment. Let's take a look.
For me? Oh,
On the
it'll
evening of
stop.
May 7th, 2019, traffic near to the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta, Georgia was heavy. On the nearby I-285, a battery truck had caught on fire, leading to the closing of entrance and exit points along the highway. Terry Robinson, a state correctional officer out of uniform, was driving down Clark Howell Highway when he witnessed a red Dodge Dakota pickup truck run a red light. The truck narrowly missed hitting a black Jeep and then crashed straight into a semi-trailer truck. The driver of the semi, Stanley Kimball, emerged from his cab unharmed. Likewise, the driver of the Jeep, Hannah Payne, was uninjured and pulled over to the side of the road. Both Terry and 21-year-old Hannah placed calls to 911 to report the incident.
There was just an accident. I'm sure they've already called, but I just witnessed it, and I just wanted to make sure that I guess called the police as well in case they didn't.
All right. Were they what were the kind of vehicles involved?
It's a red Dodge pickup truck. I think it's a Dakota, and a semi was involved.
62-year-old Kenneth Herring's vehicle was smoking and leaking fluids as a result of the head-on collision, but Kenneth appeared uninjured. Kenneth got out of his truck and began walking its perimeter, perhaps assessing the damage. 20 minutes passed at the crash site with no response from law enforcement. Terry, worried for Kenneth's behavior, called back into 911 dispatch to check in.
We had a call earlier, and it's been over like 20 minutes now, and no police or no ambulance has shown up. The reason why I'm asking that because it's the driver who caused the accident. I think he's impaired. Something's going on with him, and so the thing about we're trying to tell him is turn his vehicle off and smoke, and he's not following the command. So that's why I'm asking to see what if then he's moving his ear. He's going to drive off, man. He's driving off. He's driving off. Take a picture of the driving light. Take a picture. Quick.
Despite the damage to the pickup, Kenneth Herring had managed to restart the truck's ignition and left the scene. Terry called out to the others, Stanley and Hannah, to take a photo of the truck's license plate. Then, the driver of the Jeep, young Hannah Payne, got behind her wheel and took off after Kenneth.
So he's in a red Dakota. It's a 96 model, 97 model. He's an older black gentleman, gray hair, blue shirt on, and front end damage, heavily front end damage in front. Heavily front end. I knew he was going to do something. The lady in the Jeep was almost in the incident, so she turned around and she went after him. So she's going to take a picture of his vehicle and stuff. Can't even believe it. I knew there was something wrong with it, yeah. I knew it.
Simultaneous to Terry's conversation, Hannah also placed a follow-up call to 911.
I actually called about 20 minutes ago for an accident, and no one has shown up yet. But I am under the impression that the guy that caused the accident, who ran the red light, is drunk, and he's gotten back in his car, and he's looking like he's trying to drive away. Okay, can you get his tag number? Hold on, he's driving away. Okay, so he is going west, down down Fort Parkway. Okay, so you couldn't get a tag number? No, but I'm catching up to him right now. Okay, man, we actually do not want you to chase him. We just want you to be safe. And I understand. To chase him. I understand 100%. I'm just going to get the tag number, if nothing else. But I am going west down Fort Parkway.
She managed to view and relay the truck's information to the dispatcher. Then, instead of returning to the scene of the original crash site, she continued on.
So, if you can go back to that location where the incident happened, it's because someone is actually on the way to you guys now. Okay, well, there's a police officer there, but he is drunk. I'm sorry, but I'm here to tell you I'm not going to follow him because he is going to cause another accident. So I will stay behind him until an officer can get to us, but until then, I'm not moving. Yeah, no, that's what I want. I want you guys to go back to the location where it happened, and the officer will be out there momentarily, okay?
What the 911 operator was unaware of at that time was that Hannah Payne had stopped her Jeep in the roadway at the intersection of Forest Parkway and Riverdale Road, roughly 1 full mile from where the crash had taken place. There, she had exited her vehicle and approached the driver's side window of Kenneth's Dodge pickup with her cell phone in hand. The audio from the call records muffled voices and noises as Hannah's cell phone dropped to the ground. A heated encounter ensued, during which Hannah had pulled her licensed handgun from the holster she wore on her right side. The gun had fired, striking Kenneth Herring in the abdomen. A moment later, Hannah retrieved her cell phone and relayed what she alleged happened back to 911 dispatch.
Ma'am! Yes. Ma'am! He just pulled the trigger of my gun in my hand while he was... Ma'am, you were not supposed to follow him. He hit my car! Okay, you got the tag number. There's a police officer down the street. Tell them to come up here now. He pulled the trigger on my gun after he attacked me. Tell the police officer to turn around from the 285 exit and come up here immediately.
Officer Ritchie of the Clayton County Police Department arrived at the scene to find bystanders calling out that the woman next to the Jeep had just shot a man. Hannah's black sleeveless top had been torn during the encounter with Kenneth. She had changed into a pink hoodie, but remained at the scene. Hannah promptly handed over the weapon. While responders rushed to pull Kenneth from the truck and perform emergency measures, Hannah argued and pleaded with witnesses on the roadway. She hoped that those who had a clear view of the encounter would stick around to tell the police what she had just claimed to 911 dispatch, that Kenneth Herring had attacked her and fired the gun in the process. Kenneth was rushed to the hospital by emergency services. He would not survive. Hannah was placed in the back of a police cruiser while responders on the scene began to work through what had occurred. On the busy road at the end of the workday, there were numerous witnesses that had observed the events from different vantage points. Formally waiving her Miranda rights, Hannah Payne began to tell responding officers how she claimed the gun had been fired. Hannah Payne had been working in property management since her high school graduation. She dealt with rental properties, showing off new rentals to prospective tenants and collecting rent. As part of this role, the young woman would regularly hold meetings with strangers, sometimes in vacant buildings, and she was occasionally responsible for carrying large sums of cash. Hannah cited these reasons as her motive for acquiring her handgun. A Georgia resident must be at least 21 to be issued a weapons carry license. In 2019, Hannah Payne was just 21 years old. Kenneth Herring was 62 years old when he was killed.
How would you want him to be remembered?
As a hardworking man, a good grandfather, a good husband, He was just a good person all around.
And what did he do? What was his?
He did a lot of things. He was a mechanic. He did air conditioning. He did a little bit of everything. He wasn't a master of none, but he did everything.
Great talent.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The truck that he drove had been his father's. Inside, police found a large collection of items, including a variety of tools that he would have used in the course of his work. What they also found were needles. These were required for regular insulin injections. Based upon Kenneth's behavior observed at the scene of the crash, it was deduced that he had likely been experiencing diabetic or insulin shock. The Clayton County medical examiner was unable to determine what his blood sugar levels would have been at that time during the autopsy, as these levels plummet naturally post-mortem. However, the key witness, Terry Robinson, in his capacity as a state correctional officer, worked at a state medical facility. He told responding officers at the scene that Kenneth behaved in a similar fashion to diabetic patients that he had observed at his place of work. Unlike Hannah Payne, Terry did not believe Kenneth had been drunk, but rather that he had been experiencing a medical emergency. Kenneth's widow, Christine, later confirmed the diagnosis. She believed Kenneth was suffering from a diabetic emergency and may have been trying to drive himself to the Southern Regional Medical Center when the crash occurred.
Yeah, I know he was having a diabetic episode because he don't just run off the scene. I knew he was trying to get to the hospital.
Only a few hours after the shooting, Hannah sat down with detectives from Clayton County PD. She spoke first of the accident that occurred at Clark Howell Highway, leading to her decision to give chase. She told the detectives that she approached Kenneth in order to compel him to return to the scene of the earlier accident, as instructed by the 911 dispatcher. When he entered the merging lane to turn right, she saw an opportunity to force him to stop. Hannah then claimed to have walked towards him with her cell phone in hand, explaining that she was speaking with law enforcement. She said that is when Kenneth lashed out and grabbed her. Her phone dropped to the ground.
He reaches out and kind of like hit my phone out and grabbed my wrist. He grabbed my wrist. We kind of started going back and forth, fighting. And that's when he punched the gas and he ran into my tire. And he's telling me the whole time, oh, well, I don't know who you are, blah, blah, blah. So he told me I have something to do reaching. And I don't know if he's reaching, I wasn't watching him, I was trying to pull away from him. And I had gotten off of me when he had my shirt, and that's when he ripped my shirt.
While grabbing a hold of the front of her shirt, Hannah recounts that Kenneth put his foot on the gas and drove into her Jeep, hitting the tire. "I've got something for you," Kenneth was said to have told her.
He went forward and he hit it, and I told him, whoa, I said, so you need to stop. I'm like, the police are right here, so you just need to stop. Okay, I got something for you, So then, that's when he's saying, yeah, okay, I got something for you, something about, I don't even know who the F you are, you're nobody, or whatever. And that's when I pulled it out, because he leaned, saying, I got something for you. He's pulling at it, and that's when I told him, after he's reaching, and I told him, I said, I have a gun, I said, I will shoot you. And that's when I rushed for it.
Hannah stated that with Kenneth's hand over the gun, the two struggled over the weapon. It was twisted and turned, pointing towards her, then back towards him. Hannah tells police that she did not have her finger on the trigger, or maybe she did.
So he was pulling at me, and that's when my finger, I put it on the trigger, and he's pulling, and he lunged and he swung, and he grabbed, like right here on the back of my shirt. So when he grabbed is when I honestly, I don't know. I don't remember telling myself to pull the trigger.
The gun had a double safety feature. A trigger on the upper back of the handle must first be pushed in, usually by a firm grip around the handle, and then a finger must also be placed inside the trigger guard and then pulled simultaneously in order for the gun to fire. Hannah claimed that she did not think that her finger was on the trigger because she was aware of the safety feature on her own gun. However, she also told the detectives that during the struggle over the weapon, both her and Kenneth's fingers were in the trigger guard.
Do you think that he pulled the trigger, or do you think that you pulled the trigger? What I told them originally was that I felt like he did. Because I did not have my finger. I know about the double safety mechanism, so that's why I specifically did not have my finger on the trigger. Okay. Now, when I pulled it back around, after he was, tugging at me and he lunged, he still had his hand on it, and I had my hand in on it. Okay. But it was more so of a matter of force. on my hand, so that way both of our hands was in the, I don't know, the trigger. The trigger bar? Trigger, yeah, yeah, okay. And as I'm pulling, and that's when off.
Tiana McCraney was driving a colleague of hers home from work when she came up behind Hannah's Jeep on Forest Parkway. After witnessing the Jeep cut off Kenneth's pickup truck in the merging lane and the ensuing altercation, she called 911. Her account painted a very different picture from the one Hannah had described to the detectives.
The intersection of Phoenix Boulevard and Riverdale, right before the highway, is this woman, it was like a merging lane, and then it was a merging lane, and then she like stopped impatient and went around him for no reason because it was coming traffic. And then he almost hit her because he did that. So he braked suddenly, but she got mad and hopped out her car, and then she pulled out her gun, started screaming at him. And he was like, "What the heck?" And she started hitting him.
Tiana, having approached from behind the Jeep, was not alone in viewing Hannah Payne as the aggressor in the incident. Cameron Williams, late for a seminar and pulling through the scene in the moments after the weapon had been fired, managed to record a brief video. He captured Hannah with gun in hand, pulling away from the truck. Then the video showed her leading to the ground. Cameron thought this action was to retrieve the shell casing. Instead, it was likely the moment that Hannah collected her cell phone and proceeded to tell the 911 dispatch to send an ambulance. Hannah's injuries were documented by Clayton County PD following her interview. There were light but visible scratches on the back of her neck where she claimed to have been grabbed and pulled forward. On her right wrist, where she told detectives that Kenneth had grabbed her, the area was red and slightly swollen. Hannah claims also to have sustained a cut lip and redness that threatened to bruise on her face. Her hands showed similar signs of distress. While waiting for detectives in the station, Hannah had removed her acrylic nails. These had also been broken in the struggle, she said. When items in the red truck were processed, police found a handful of items that may have supported her claims that Kenneth had been reaching back into the vehicle for a weapon in order to harm her. Amongst the mess inside the vehicle were a few heavier tools, a flashlight, and most notably, a knife. The knife was located amongst other items in the back of the passenger seat. It was deemed by law enforcement to have been accessible from the driver's side, but in their opinion, it was no more relevant to the investigation than any other of Kenneth's tools. It was Hannah's word alone that Kenneth had been reaching for something to harm her with at all. A warrant outlining 8 charges was issued for Hannah Payne. She faced 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count each of malice murder, aggravated assault, as well as false imprisonment for having allegedly blocked in Kenneth's truck and held him at gunpoint. She was also charged with 3 counts of weapons possession during the commission of a crime. If convicted, she could be sentenced to life in prison, with over a decade added consecutively. Beginning with the first charges handed down in late May and extending to the 1st of October, Hannah's defense, led by attorney Matt Tucker, filed a series of motions. Mr. Tucker also filed emergency requests to reconsider bond based upon the emerging evidence from the state. In these hearings, Mr. Tucker called Hannah a good Samaritan who got into a bad situation. He told the court that Hannah was in fear for her life. She felt that she needed to pull out the gun to defend herself. Mr. Tucker also argued that the 911 recordings from the incident had been purposefully altered by the state to remove sections of audio that were beneficial to the defense. He even went so far as to argue that cell phone footage would clearly show the struggle between Hannah and Kenneth and would prove her innocence. Although these claims seemed unlikely, Hannah was eventually granted bail and released on home arrest with an ankle monitor and given a 9 p.m. curfew. Hannah's release on bond was not received well by the Herring family and many others who believed that her actions were racially motivated. Initially, the case drew national attention because it involved a white woman shooting a black man. And then Hannah Payne was granted bond twice. Those closest to Hannah spoke out about the controversy taking place in the media and what they viewed as an unfair and inaccurate depiction of the Hannah Payne they knew.
We're sorry for what happened and everything in regards to Mr. Herring's family and everything, but Hannah is not the person that they are saying she is. She's not at all. She's the sweetest, most caring, does not see color, does not see race, nothing at all. She is just an amazing human being. She is. And if you ever get the chance to know her, you'll realize that as soon as you lay eyes on her.
Statewide judicial orders during the height of the COVID-19 outbreak slowed down the entire court system in Georgia. These initial delays pushed Hannah's trial date well past 2020 and then into 2021. After 3 years passed, the case still showed no signs of going to trial. Kenneth's brother Keith Herring wrote a note to the NAACP seeking assistance. My brother, Kenneth Herring, was murdered in cold blood by Hannah Payne. This murderer is out on bond and has not been brought to justice. Social media latched onto the cause, declaring Hannah Payne as a racist Karen who assumed she had the right to pull over a black man at gunpoint while he was having a medical emergency. By the spring of 2022, Hannah Payne was still released on house arrest and there was no trial date. The NAACP released a statement at that time expressing grave concern over the lack of urgency and calling for the expeditious resolution of the case. A trial date was set for later that year. But then the case met with yet another extremely unusual cause for delay, when Hannah's defense counsel, Matt Tucker, did not show up to court.
I'm going to find that Mr. Tucker is in contempt of court. He failed to follow the rules of court. In notifying the court, I am going to also file a grievance with the State Bar of Georgia because of his behavior. This is not the first time I've had an issue with him failing to come and come on time. I will take care of everything else on my end. There's not going to be a trial today in the matter of State of Georgia versus Hannah Payne.
Mr. Tucker told the court that he was unable to attend last minute because he had suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. Judge Malone doubted the truthfulness of this claim, calling the hospital directly to confirm. Mr. Tucker was indeed a patient, but had not suffered a stroke. Nonetheless, the trial could not commence on time and was delayed further. In December 2023, nearly 4 years had passed since the death of Kenneth Herring, when a jury finally sat to hear evidence in the murder trial of Hannah Payne. Clayton County Prosecutor Bonnie Smith presented Hannah Payne on the day of the shooting as entitled and angry. The original traffic accident had not involved her vehicle. She had disregarded the instructions from the 911 operator not to chase Kenneth's truck. By pulling her front wheels in front of the pickup, she had trapped the victim, dismissed his visible signs of confusion and medical distress, and then made demands on him with no authority to do so. An escalation occurred when Kenneth pulled his vehicle forward, hitting the wheel of Hannah's Jeep. That caused her to pull out her gun.
His vehicle is still in gear, and while he's trying to deal with the defendant at his door, his car moves forward. And what happens is that he bumps into her Jeep. Her black and pink Jeep. Hear her say that that's why she shoots him. And once that happens, you'll hear an escalation in what she's saying. Get the out of the car. Get the out of the car. I will shoot you. I will shoot you.
As she's trying to get back from the car, and she starts on her knees. She's laying in there trying to grab something. And you'll be able to see the contents of what was in that vehicle. You'll use your common sense and your experience when you sit to see, what was about to happen, what was going to happen, what may have been said.
Witnesses from the scene took the stand to testify to their recollections from that day. The incident itself had occurred extremely quickly. Each witness had approached the scene from different angles, and so had various vantage points. Each had potential visual obstructions. Partly because of this, the eyewitness testimony was, in part, inconsistent. One witness recalled that Hannah had pulled her gun immediately after exiting her Jeep, while all others recalled that this occurred after she had already engaged with Kenneth at his truck. Another witness misidentified in court where on the roadmap the shooting had actually occurred. Still others could not say where the gun was, inside or outside of the vehicle, when the shots were fired. Defense attorney Matt Tucker's approach to cross-examining these eyewitnesses exacerbated the patchy accounts, and he frustrated both witnesses and the prosecutors. There were some key aspects of the eyewitness testimony that was consistent. Most importantly, every witness described Hannah's demeanor when approaching Kenneth in his truck as aggressive, and every witness reported seeing Hannah strike Kenneth. Hannah's claim of self-defense had no basis in law if she was determined by the jury to be the aggressor in the situation, and if she made no attempts to de-escalate events.
She got out of her Jeep and she immediately went to the truck driver's side, yelling and punching.
Could you see anything about the facial expressions or anything like that on the driver of the truck?
He looked confused and shocked. So I figured something was wrong with him. She was pointing the gun at him, telling him to get out the car. And I think she got a little frustrated because he wasn't getting out the car.
Could you describe the demeanor of the woman with the gun?
At what point?
Let's start when she first gets out of the Jeep. What do you see?
Anger. She was almost like she was in a rage, very highly upset.
It caught my attention because it was really aggressive. It was just road rage at the time. And then a woman popped out of her car and she said, "Get that up out of the truck." See him a bunch of times and she pulled out a gun.
On one other point, the witnesses also agreed. After the gun was fired, Hannah Payne showed no remorse. She did not move towards Kenneth to attempt to render aid.
She was on the phone and she just changed her sweater and she was just kind of walking around. But I don't remember her going back to the truck, approaching the truck again.
When I saw her, she had the gun and the cops were coming and she just was like, "Here, give it to them." I don't know. There wasn't a lot of emotion.
What was the defendant's demeanor immediately after the victim was shot?
She had no remorse. She was just she was thugged out. She had no remorse at all. She was so right in that moment. She felt like she had done something.
The medical examiner found that Kenneth Herring had died from a single gunshot wound to the abdomen. There were no other notable injuries to his person. As defense counsel was quick to point out, the examination found no signs of bruising to the chest, which might have been expected had Hannah been punching the 62-year-old repeatedly, as every witness testified. Kenneth had only one small marking, a pinpoint-sized mark on his collarbone. The gunshot wound had entered in a downward trajectory, from the left to the right. Matt Tucker further argued that this was consistent with the struggle over the gun that Hannah had described. Hannah took the stand to testify in her own defense. She told the jury that she believed that she had been following the instructions of authorities when at the scene. When Terry Robinson, the key witness at the first accident, identified himself as a state officer and asked her to get a photo of the red pickup's tags, she did what she could to acquire it. She found out later that Terry was a correctional officer at a state facility and not a police officer. Terry testified that he in no way instructed Hannah to chase after Kenneth.
And as he's pulling off, she's asking me, was I able to get the tag number? Realizing I wasn't able to, I was already at my vehicle and I completely got in my vehicle and went to go pull off. Okay. And at that time, the truck driver and the state officer was still standing over in the street and he started waving me over, calling me towards him.
Okay. And when you got close to him, what happened?
I asked him, did he go straight? And he said, yes. And he's telling me, he said, go. When I was in my vehicle, when he was waving me over, his motions it was almost like he was waving me on. So when he brought me up, when I got up to him is when he told me to go.
So at that time, you were under the impression that he's a state officer sending you to get the tag and 911 knows that you're on the way to get the tag.
Correct.
She also claimed to hear only portions of the instructions given by the 911 operator. Witnesses described her driving aggressively, nearly hitting one of their vehicles, and then dangerously pulling in front of the red truck to force it to a stop. Hannah testified that she was not chasing the truck, just following it.
So you never heard them give a warning of not to chase? Or?
No. That's when she told me that she just wanted me to be safe. I told her that I understood and that I wasn't chasing. I was just going to follow, to stay behind him, to stay with him until the police officer could get to us.
Hannah told the jury a similar story as the one she told police, that after approaching Kenneth to ask him to return to the scene of the original crash, he grabbed her and would not let go. Hannah also pointed to the moment that Kenneth pulled the truck forward into her Jeep as a pivotal moment in the altercation. But now, Hannah says it was in that moment that her life flashed before her eyes.
While it only may have been a few steps or a few feet, when you are being held against your will and you have no idea what's ahead of you and you're looking down, it felt like it lasted forever. And I just remember it was like I saw my life flash before my eyes and I thought I was going to go down Riverdale Road.
Hannah's disposition during her cross-examination would prove detrimental for her defense. Although she recalled information relating to all of her defense attorney's questions calmly and effectively, Hannah's memory fell apart during cross-examination. She refused to accept the premise of many of the state's questions, including denying the record of the 911 operator, instructing her not to chase the Dodge pickup.
Can you repeat your question?
The dispatcher for a fourth time indicated to you that she wanted you to return to the incident location, correct?
Correct. And not for a fourth time, that she wanted me to not follow. So if you're asking me if I remember word for word what I said 4.5 years ago, I can not say that I do remember exactly what I said.
And do you recall that you told them that you came around that curve and you had an opportunity to get in front of him?
If that's what I said, then I...
And telling him calmly that you were on the phone with 911?
I mean, when you say calmly, do you mean like, was I irate or was I louder?
That is your testimony today that you did not get out of your vehicle and run up to Mr. Herring's vehicle telling him to get out of the car.
Correct.
And you never once got out of your vehicle and go up to him and tell him to get out of the fucking car.
Well, everyone heard I did.
In closing arguments, Matt Tucker continued to argue that Hannah was simply young, naive, and had tried to do the right thing. It was a difficult argument to make when faced with the lineup of prosecution witnesses that told the jury they saw Hannah angry, cursing, and making demands of an older man in the midst of a medical emergency.
Never been in a situation like that. In her mind, she's a young individual trying to help out. She hasn't seen the bad sides. Or the old phrase, no good deed goes unpunished.
You know how much entitlement you have to chase somebody down, detain them, jump out your car, and run toward a stranger. He didn't know her. He didn't know why she was approaching his car, and demand that they do anything. He didn't have to listen to her. He didn't have to do anything she said.
The jury deliberated for about 2 hours. Hannah Payne was found guilty on all 8 counts, including malice murder.
When I heard the first verdict, I know we wasn't supposed to show sign, but tears started rolling down my face because at that moment, I felt a relief that came over.
At her sentencing, family and friends spoke about the Hannah Payne that they knew, the Hannah that was an intrinsically good person. In contrast, the state spoke about the real Hannah Payne, the Hannah that they said had revealed herself in the 911 call, and the one that had testified at trial.
But I want this court to consider what you've really heard about the real Hannah Payne. Her demeanor in this courtroom, her demeanor during her cross-examination, where she was as disrespectful as she could be, only remembered answers to her lawyer's questions. Her demeanor and who the real Hannah Payne is was heard in that 911 call, when she decided that she's smarter and righter than everyone else.
The state requested that the court impose a cumulative sentence across all 8 counts of life imprisonment with a consecutive term of 15 years on the false imprisonment and other felony gun charges. They left the question of parole open to the court's discretion. Hannah was given life in prison with the possibility of parole, but her conviction on the false imprisonment earned her another 8 years to be served consecutively, and the felony gun charge another 5 years in addition to that. After the hearing, Clayton County District Attorney Tasha Mosley weighed in on the sentencing while revealing that the families of Payne and Herring have both been receiving death threats. DA Mosley said that her office is looking into opening criminal investigations against those who have sent the threats. Mosley begged the public to leave the families alone, as she felt that the sentence was fair.
This is ridiculous that we're having that type of security in this type of case when justice was served. Somebody did not walk out of here free. She is going to prison for the next 43 years. America needs to heal. You know, these families need time to heal, and that you're not helping them heal by threatening their lives.
On the motivation of Hannah Payne, the DA said, "We sat for 4 years and tried to figure out why."
And trying to figure out why. Only Hannah Payne knows why she did it. We will never know. We will never know because she never really told us the truth on the stand. That story kept changing.
That was the tragic case of Kenneth Herring and the conviction of Hannah Payne. Thanks for joining me. I'm Kevin. This is Just Not.
Thanks for letting us watch you, Kevin. This link is in the chat. I dropped it earlier. This story was crazy when it first started. I never intended it I never expected it to end the way that it did. So I wanted to share it with you guys. And tomorrow I think even though I'm doing trial during the day, I'll still do another story at night because I got to get some lives out there. So the person that I'm doing tomorrow is Cynthia and Dennis Perkins. They are from Louisiana. If you want to look them up, they are who I'm doing tomorrow night. Dennis and which one are you, lady? Cynthia. If you don't have anything to do, and we got 12 hours. 24 hours, 12 hours. So why not? Looks interesting. Very, very, very disturbing story. Cynthia is a teacher. Dennis is an ex-cop. It involves children. That's all I will say. Very disturbing. I will see you guys tomorrow morning now. I'm not coming back tonight. I will see you guys tomorrow for court. Until then, sweet dreams. Sleep well.